having me here. I'm really excited to share a little bit about this journey of being a first-time entrepreneur. Just for my own personal curiosity, how many folks here have started a company before, been a founding member of a company? Wow, that's a lot more than I expected. How many folks haven't done that yet, but are thinking of maybe doing that soon and jumping in? A decent amount. Okay, well, hopefully I won't scare you off today. It's a great journey. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I'm really happy that I did do it. But certainly had some twists and turns that I wasn't necessarily expecting in the beginning. Okay, so my story begins in 2010. I was finishing up my PhD and trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life? I knew I didn't want to be an academic forever. I knew I wanted to work in industry. Thought about working for a big pharma company, a big biotech company, and that seemed like a good idea. Folks seem happy doing that. You get nice salary. You know what it takes to get to your bonus. You know what it takes to get your next promotion. You have kind of a clear career path. And you can think about where you're going to be in 10 or 20 years. There might be some twists and turns, but it's pretty well defined. Or you could do almost the opposite of that, like I did, and think about startups, right? And you could, who knows what's going to happen? You get lost in the woods there. You could fall off a cliff. You could make it to the top of a mountain and be basking in the sun. You don't really know. And something about not knowing attracted me to it. It seemed exciting. It seemed like a little bit of an adventure. And then I began looking around. I saw the Social Network movie, which of course, describes how these kids become the youngest self-made billionaires in the U.S. And we hear about stories like that, which of course is the regular story, right? Now, I wasn't in software. I was looking at biotech, but there's still amazing deals being done there. I don't need to tell anybody that there's money in biotech. And so, I looked around at other companies that were sort of similar to what I was thinking about, drug discovery companies that had some technology. These were a few examples of things that were in the press around the time I was started. This company, Forma, launching with a $200 million deal. Another company launching with $1 billion deal. You'd see these 9, 10-figure numbers all the time. You think, wow, my technology is at least as good as these folks, so does that mean I multiply by like 2 if I'm twice as good, or how does this work? Well, I began talking to some other folks, talked to my professor I was getting a PhD from, and he had this great story about finishing up his work, his postdoc work, being involved in starting a company, raising $60 million in a year, getting up to 100 employees, selling the company for $450 million. And it was really exciting, or at least that's the part of the story I heard. Right? The part that I tuned out was when he said that the investors pulled their money out when the tech bubble burst, and they went from 100 employees to 4 employees, and he had to fire people he liked and cared about because there was no money, and then he was pushed out. The company was sold out of bankruptcy to somebody else who kept it for a few years, didn't do much, and made $450 million as a result. So, it's some serious ups and downs, right? But I think, these things happen sometimes. So why not give it a shot and see where things end up for us? So I put a team of folks together. These are folks I worked with, people who understood the technology, people I liked, people I respected, and we started out. And those of you who have started companies before probably instantly see the problem here. I'm a scientist, and I worked with other scientists who I knew to create a company. And it's not that was a bad idea in part. These are guys who have all contributed a lot of value to the company. They're all really smart, all fantastic. But there's one little thing missing there, right? There's nobody with business experience. There's nobody with industry experience. That's like a little minor detail, right? And it's not that we didn't want that. It's not that we didn't recognize that. We need a business person. We didn't know where to find one. So we're at a university, right? And we're thinking, if I'm going to build a very valuable company, knowing that I have this lack of industry experience, I don't want to just have an MBA. It might be very smart, very ambitious, but also doesn't have any experience, because is that really helpful? So where do I find somebody who's done this before? It's really hard, especially at that time in Los Angeles. A lot of these folks are in San Diego or San Francisco or Boston. Maybe you can pull somebody up, but it's hard. And a lot of people who are really good, who have done this and really know the industry and are really good at their job, they have a job with their company, right? And so they don't always have time to jump ship and come with you. unless they've just taken an exit and they're looking for something to do. But those folks have so many opportunities thrown at them from every angle, right? So how do you make yourself stand out? That was a big problem for us. And the decision I made at the time is, okay, we're going to jump into this anyway. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to get some early success. And that early success will help us meet some established business people who can really help propel things to the next step. This was 2011. The credit crunch had hit. VCs and biotech weren't investing in early stage ventures. They were reinvesting in things they already invested in. So that wasn't really a real option. But that's okay. There's other places to get money. We saw an accelerator program coming out of USC. We were USC. I was a USC student at the time. That seemed perfect. The government, in this case, the National Institute of Health, has grants for essentially startup companies or starting companies or early companies. And there's angel investors, right? High net worth folks might be interested in biotech companies. So we put together a grant proposal. We're pretty happy with it. Didn't get funded. About 15% success rate in these grants, so I guess we shouldn't have been too surprised. Spoke to some angel investors and didn't get that either. And in a lot of ways, I wasn't trained to talk to angels. I was trained not to talk to angels in a lot of ways. And so what do I mean by that? Well, when did I talk to people? Well, at group meetings talking about, whatever latest research to my professor and other PhD students, or maybe on campus talking about our research to other PhD students, or maybe at a conference talking about our research to other PhDs and PhD students. And that's fine. That's a good story. You get very well trained about how to share your science, but that's not going to get an investor, right? I mean, they want to hear, how are you going to give me 5 or 10x return on my investment? What's the plan? What's the business plan? Not just a scientific plan. And show me the science that backs this up. Show me the science that gives you a specific advantage. But in support of the business plan, in support of me getting my investment back. This isn't charity. This is investing. And I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know how to do that yet. But the most heartbreaking one was when we didn't get the accelerator program. And this came after part of this program was you interviewed with an industry professional, and I got really lucky. I interviewed with somebody who's a PhD, who started a company as a PhD, transitioned to business, and now is working at a major pharmaceutical company. So somebody was a perfect audience. I told them about what we were doing, got them really excited about it. He asked some questions, we hit it out of the ballpark, said, you should have asked for twice as much money as you asked for. This is fantastic. And then 2 weeks later, I got the notice saying that we didn't make it to the next step of the program. And it was all about the business plan. We had a business plan that in theory sounded good, but in reality just didn't hold water. And so I almost quit. I figured, well, I believe in this, but nobody else seems to. How am I going to get this off the ground? I wrote back to this gentleman, his name is Avi, and said, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate the conversation. Let me know, maybe sometimes we'll cross paths again. And I was about ready to give up. And he wrote me back saying, why don't you come down to La Jolla, pitch to my team. I really liked it. Maybe we'll fund you instead of this accelerator program. So I went down there, pitched. It went really, really well. And then he said, who's doing the business for you guys? Well, it's us right now. And he says, well, you know what? I know somebody. I'll make a connection. She's really good. You're going to like her. And we had our first real business connection, Netta Kleiser. So she was a PhD who had transitioned to business. She had done business development and licensing experience at Amgen, which is a huge biotech company, was VP at a couple of other very well-funded startups. These companies raised tens of millions of dollars. One of them, Avi was involved in. And he said she really knows what she's doing. She knows the science, so she can help translate business to you and help maybe teach you some of the language that you don't know. And it's been a phenomenal experience. She's been absolutely fantastic. And I don't think that we would have made it out of the university without her help. So we reapplied. Ideas Empowered looked like we were going to get it. NIH funding, we took some of the criticisms from our grant, course corrected a bit, reapplied, got a really good score. That was looking good. And then started working with Big Pharma. And we were thinking, well, if I'm having trouble pitching to certain crowds, well, there's other crowds that seem to be receiving it. Maybe business development people at pharmaceutical companies. And we can take our technology, we can work collaboratively to design a new drug and create some new intellectual property that we can license to a pharma company. And that was the plan. So first lesson, or maybe second, and maybe the first lesson is you have to kiss a lot of frogs. And second lesson is, that marketing stuff's actually kind of important. To be able to communicate. Who knew? You know, as a scientist starting out, we were thinking people will see the technology, they'll instantly recognize the value, money will fall from the sky, and we'll be off, right? Who needs sales? Who needs marketing? Who needs to communicate? Well, it turns out that stuff is actually kind of important. Maybe more important in the technology or the science or other aspects of the company. Okay, so getting back to the story. We saw these deals coming and said, let's set up shop. We want to hit the ground running, really deliver on all this stuff. Found some incubator space over on Hill Street by Starbucks. Has that advantage of being right next to a coffee shop. Hired our first employee who worked with me as an undergraduate while I was at the university. Then she graduated. Phenomenal, really hard worker. We wouldn't be here without her. And then we were just ready to get going. And then we were just ready to get going. And we were just kind of waiting around and waiting and waiting, and then some more waiting was involved. And so I came to this other realization that nothing happens quickly, or maybe I should say more broadly that time is relative, because folks said, let's get something done soon. And so to me, that meant like maybe a couple weeks, couple months. Soon is, a couple months seems kind of far away, right? So the average pharma deal takes a year to a year and a half. You have to get the scientists involved and get a plan. You have to get the business people involved with a plan that matches that. You have to have the lawyers involved to capture all of that in a document. It can take a year and a half. So I guess that's soon if you have a comfortable paycheck. But it's a really long time if you're living on a credit card. Even more so, the folks that we're working with, some of the decision makers, were in Europe, and they have this fantastic thing in Europe called a summer holiday. And that summer holiday is like 6 weeks, right? And so if you have more than one decision maker, they don't take the same 6 weeks off. Like, it kind of staggers, right? So you have 2 months there where you can't do anything. Except it's worse because when they're getting ready to go on a holiday, they're not thinking about getting a deal done. And when they're getting back, well, they've just been on their holiday, so they have a lot of work to do. So you're out for like 2.5 months easily. And for us, burning about $10,000 a month, okay, cool, that summer holiday cost me $25,000 that we really didn't have. We can't just add that to the price of the deal, not as an early company that hasn't proven itself. So how do you deal with that? Well, I guess you open up another credit card. and I opened up quite a few credit cards through the course of this process here. But we got through it. We delivered. We delivered on our grant, got ready to write a much larger one as a second phase of it. We delivered on the proof of concept work. We were able to leverage that work, that data, that understanding of pitching to other companies and get negotiations for deals that were about an order of magnitude, about 10 times larger in size, and things were moving nicely. But then that led to something else that was sort of unanticipated. So the amount of oversight for a $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 deal is a lot different than for $1 million or even $500,000 or above deal. And so people from pharma would come out, they'd visit us, see our facility. It always went really well. We could see that we were capable of doing what we wanted to do. But the problem was our license agreement from the university. It was not well written. And we tried to fix it, but we couldn't. We ran into the situation of either take this as it is or you don't get anything, and so we took it, and then we wanted to fix it, and it was really challenging. It was an agreement that this negotiation went on forever, cost us $100,000 to fix. We lost the deal and almost lost the second deal. Now, the people we dealt with at the time are gone. We have a totally new batch of people at the university and the licensing department. We worked with them. They seemed like they're really good, really accommodating. But there was a broader lesson in that for me. I had my first lesson in herding cats. So I had this vision that everybody would see this, they'd say, making drugs, you could be helping cure a disease, you're making a lot of money in the process, this is great, let's do this, let's make something. And everybody that was somehow involved with this would want to see that happen. That would be their primary goal and interest. Well, I mean, that's not the case, right? That's not the case at all. The university, those folks that I was dealing with and having a hard time with, they had previously worked with a company that did some things they shouldn't have done. There was litigation, and now everybody was risk adverse. Risk adverse plus new company, that doesn't really work, right? So they're motivated by having low risk. I didn't appreciate that at the time, and I think that caused more problems than it would have if I had really understood that. And then getting back to the whole pharma thing, why does it take a year and a half to get a deal done and get people together to talk about something? That's risk too, right? I mean, these folks, the individuals, not the institution, but the individuals, they get promoted by not making mistakes and getting good deals done. They get their bonuses by getting good deals done and not making silly mistakes. There's no way we can get a $200 million deal, because if we didn't deliver, they wouldn't want to go to their boss and say, I gave these kids $200 million and it didn't work. Right? They could never do that. So you have to kind of understand the perspective of the person that you're working with and what their goals were. And that's something that I didn't fully appreciate until going through this process. Okay, so we got the license deal done. These deals look like they were coming through the pipeline. Looks like things were going to happen. And I had this moment for people who have seen this show. And people who are chuckling, I think, have seen it. It's a fantastic show. It's called Silicon Valley. I've seen about 5 episodes and I had to stop watching because it was giving me a lot of anxiety. I watched the pilot when I was going through something almost exactly the same as the pilot. So in the pilot episode, he creates some interesting code and somebody wants to buy it, and then he's almost selling it, and then somebody else says, no, don't sell it, I'll invest and we'll grow and it'll get so much bigger, and this guy's like torn in two, right? Like which one do I take? No matter which one I take, it's going to be the wrong one. I had the same situation. I had somebody offered me a large chunk of money. All my credit cards were maxed out, so that sounded really good. Really good people to work with. Would have been a good enough exit. Would have been spectacular by like a biotech standard, but for me personally, it would have been good. And I was really thinking about taking it. And I called some of the companies that we were working with and prepared to work with and said, we've been talking for a long time, but I have this offer, and I don't know. I think I'm going to take it. And one of them said, don't do that. I'll give you some money. We'll take this to the next step. It'll be way more valuable than the offer that you're getting now. And that was really, really hard to deal with emotionally, because maxed out credit cards. Hey, missus, I promise it's going to be fine. We're just going to keep going down this trail a little bit. But we did, and we did. And so, how smart was that? Well, so within a couple of weeks, we found out that a $1.5 million grant wasn't funded, so that was fun. Began kind of questioning the wisdom of any of my decisions in life at that point. So we did the obvious thing, which was to apply for more money, and that got funded. We also took some of the criticisms and made it a better deal. We had our first real deal. So a 7-figure deal with a $60 million license agreement attached to it. We had more of these pharma deals coming up on much, much better terms. There were 3 that we're negotiating now that were larger than anything that we've done in the past. And it kept moving forward. And we began some internal development work. So we wouldn't be just a tech company, not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of value. Biotech is actually having a product that matches your technology. And so we began working on that. And so what are we working on? Well, we have a colon cancer product. And so colon cancer is about the 4th most prevalent in the cancer in the US, about the 3rd worldwide. And it's highly recurrent. So my wife has a friend, Robin, and she came down with colon cancer about 10 years ago, beat it, and has had it 3 times since then. Each time she has to deal with the chemo and all that misery. And just in general, has to live with this feeling of, okay, when's it going to come back again? Is the treatment going to work next time? When's it not going to work? Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? And so the drug that we're making is aimed at lowering this rate of recurrence. And if it works as it should very significantly lower that. So that once people go through this process, they don't have to keep going again and again and again. Okay, so in addition to that, like I said, we've been making more deals around the technology. We became profitable in 2016. Remember, we started in 2011, so it took us a little while to get there, but it's put us in a nice position. We're seeing nice year-over-year growth. We're not VC-backed, but this gives us a little bit of leverage in that we can build out the package in a way that really puts us in a position that we can work with the VCs that we would want when we want to use it, as opposed to a lot of folks who just have to do it because they're going to run out of money soon. Able to build a team, so having a net on board, we were able to attract more talent and tap into that network. We pulled in this guy, Paul Burke, and he was a director at Amgen and at Merck, both big pharma companies, working with these consultants that we're going to pull in. Linda was a director of licensing at a major biotech company. Got a really good legal team. So it took a long time to put the pieces together, and each success kind of built upon the other one. We were able to take that, show it to the next group of folks, get a little bit better deal, give them some confidence that we could do what we said that we could do, and keep pushing things forward. So it's been about 6 years. It's been coming along nicely. Certainly, we're not launching like Instagram did and selling for a couple years after a few $1 billion, but I would say that we're not lost in the woods either, and it's been a really good experience. Learned a lot, had a lot of fun in the process. So, thanks for letting me share the story.
Man, that's amazing. Like, I think a lot of people in this room can relate to that organic growth trajectory and just keeping your fingers crossed and hoping and praying that everything actually works out. But it seems like you did it right, and you tapped into USC, you tapped into your actual market instead of just collaborating with a bunch of strangers. And I think a lot of your success has to do with just strategic planning and good execution and maxing out credit cards. So I mean, we all have that potential, and I think that's a really amazing story. It's really inspiring for us to hear that actually worked out well. So kudos to you and your team, and you know, more hoping for more success in the future for you guys. We're going to open up to Q&A now. If you have a question, raise your hand. John, walk around with the mic. If your statements or the words that are coming out of your mouth do not end with a question mark, we will yank the microphone away from you with great pleasure. And if you would like to share stories or comments on this presentation, Steve, will you be hanging out with us a little bit afterwards?
Yeah, hang out for a little while.
Dump then, but questions now. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thanks so much. The source of innovation at university. So you're the prime example. How should it work, and what specifically was it that you tried to undo to make it really workable? You came out of the university, a tech transfer problem. What was wrong with the take it or leave it boilerplate, and what did you really need to make the technology transfer well out of the university?
I think that there's a couple of issues. One is that market terms change over time, and more importantly, market language, legal language changes over time. So when you're dealing with either a big VC or in our case, pharma, right, they have very expensive attorneys that are up on everything. And so if you don't have something that kind of matches what they're looking at, then they start questioning, is this amateur hour? Do we know you guys are new? Are you new here too? In our case, it was a little worse than that, because there was a hodgepodge of other deals that represented, in some ways, things that had gone wrong in those other deals. And in some ways, the actual license terms weren't clear. It wasn't clear if we owed 0.5% of something, or 3%, or 15%. It wasn't clear if we owed 5 and pharma owed 0.5, or what it was. And so there was a lot of confusion there, and that brought up red flags from the attorney's perspective from pharma, and brought up, okay, well, there's a whole nother level of risk in dealing with these guys from a legal perspective. And that really slowed things down. I think it's a tricky situation to be in, running a licensing department, because you're trying to mitigate risk, you're trying to do the best you can, but I think having a direct connection to maybe attorneys in Silicon Valley, or having the ability to be flexible in the language of the terms, and somebody says, this is why we need this to be different, let me explain why, and can we do something? That flexibility wasn't well received in the old crowd. The new crowd of folks do seem to receive it well, and I think it's been working out, at least in our case, much better.
I appreciate your transparency and thank you for sharing. My question to you is, do you need any more money for the next phase for this cancer situation?
We can always use more money. We are putting together a sort of investment package, and the idea was to hit the pavement when that's put together next year. And so we are seriously thinking about it. In terms of needed, we're not going to die tomorrow if we don't have it, but it could be helpful.
Question here. What steps, once you realized that you needed to increase your skill sets in terms of marketing ability, what steps did you take to sell your product as an academic, doing something that you hadn't received training for in the past?
Well, the very, very first step was finding somebody who was like-minded to me, and probably just getting lucky. Somebody who had a PhD, who had transitioned into business, who had started a tech company as a PhD, and kind of understood where I was coming from a bit. I think the bigger and better transition was trying to find somebody, and the challenge was identifying people who knew what they were doing, even though you didn't know what they were doing, right? And being able to see which one of those people could actually do something well versus the one that says they can do something well. And then, so you find that person, and you just try to get as much time as possible, right? And be able to open yourself up to criticism, be able to say, this is what I'm doing right now, tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. And when they do, your natural instinct is to be kind of hurt by it or defend it, but just say, that this is coming from a position of construction, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to integrate it, and then understand it, and then build from there. A lot of times, if you find one really good person, they have a network of other good people that they can introduce you to, so that becomes really helpful.
I just had a question. Other people in your life, your family, were they supportive, and what was harder, dealing with their stress of your credit card debt or the business stress?
So my wife was really supportive, and I wouldn't have started without her, and I wouldn't have kept going without her. It's pretty stressful. You try not to pour all the day-to-day stresses onto everybody else. It's not really totally fair. But going home at the end of the day and thinking like, wow, am I totally messing up my family's career here, my family life here? That's a burden to carry. Now we're not there anymore. We're in a good position now, and I'm very thankful for it. But you never know how things are going to turn out, right? And so that's an extra level of anxiety I think you have to carry with you until you get some traction.
Question here. So, being in such a competitive field, you're getting into, what was the point of when you were able to trust to allow your IP to go out?
That's a good question. And that's always a challenge in the balance, because a lot of the folks that we're working with also work with folks that are competitors, right? And you have to give them enough information that they want to sign a check, but not so much information that they don't have to sign a check. And so that's a constant balance. We had the lawyers file patents right away. You try to explain as much as you can, but at the same time keep the key things as your secret sauce, and just tell them that this is, we're not going to tell you until you write us a really, really big check and take the whole thing over. I erred on the side of giving too little information until I got somebody else who would be, who's been in the industry to say it's okay to say a little bit more and kind of give some more information. But there's no clear answer on that, I think. I think you just have to try to find a balance as best you can.
Anybody else have a question? Actually, I have a question for you. So you're dealing with a biotech drug that treats colon cancer. What about the insurance industry and how that impacted your business and business line?
So luckily we're at the very early stage, so not tremendously. We don't have to think. For us, and for biotech companies in our position, you get something to showing proof of concept in people, phase 2A clinical trials, and then you hand it off to somebody who's done this. You hand it off to Merck or Pfizer or one of these giant companies. So you don't have to deal with that directly. You do have to think about it a little bit. Will an insurance company ever pay for this? And there's some general formula of how much an insurance company values a person's life versus how much you can charge versus how likely it is to be successful. And as long as you're kind of in that area, then then you can make something happen. And that comes down to just showing that you're doing good in the patient.
Great talk. I just had a very simple question, which is, at what point or how did you know that the technology was commercially viable? Because there are oftentimes, I'm a PhD student, and where you're working on something and it seems like a really good idea, it seems like it'd be really useful, but then did you actually go ahead and work with doctors to do some preclinical work so that you knew, okay, there is something here, or what would your advice be?
Yeah, we didn't do that. Not directly. We were actually too early for that. We didn't have a compound that could clinically do anything. We just had a technology that seemed useful. In our case, we'd seen a couple other companies with similar technologies raise a lot of money, and we seemed to have more of the key data that they had, so that provided some comfort in saying that, hey, we can just jump into this. But sometimes it's hard. It's not really a clear answer. Obviously, if you see something work in a patient, that's fantastic, but the likelihood of starting there is pretty low.
If this has happened yet, at what point between 2011 and this year did you decide to start taking a salary? And what went into making that decision?
I didn't take a salary until we were profitable. I would take enough money to get by and deal with my credit card debt. But once we became profitable, I paid off my credit card debt and started taking a salary. Tried to make it so that it was a good enough salary, but at the same time, if money didn't come in for a month, then I would take out of my check. Or if I needed to hire somebody else, then I would take out of my check. The idea that I don't want to inhibit the growth of the company.
So you indicated you didn't take angel funds, but it sounds like maybe you did ultimately with the Uber Angel in La Jolla. Or how did you get your initial funding, and how did that grow until you got your SBIR?
Some of the founders put money in, and then I got some debt. Bootstrap. Absolutely.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. Thanks.
Thank you.